Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. It's Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and we're going to go through the eclipse together with this one. I don't have too much time, it's 40 minutes. And midheaven is 26 Sag, it's Mars hour, Mars 15 degrees Cancer, and the ascendant is close to Lot of Fortune, which is around the 22nd degree. Yes, 22nd degree of Pisces. So let's talk about the topic of war or global war as a snuff film, basically an ordered film of murder and torture and so on. And let's talk about the global intelligence as the Masonic architects. So first of all, the first topic, okay? One of the things that happen as decision makers are trained is that they have to be in secret societies. So either they're born into these secret societies or sold into these secret societies. And that basically requires them to be members of Peter Rings, okay, amongst other things. A part of the missions that they have when they embark on bigger role is to have these giant snuff films, which basically is documentation where they are responsible for a huge war crime, like a democide, a genocide, and so on and so forth. Okay. When these people, we talk about friends of Peter Rings, let's talk about Epstein Ring, okay? Talk about Epstein Island, and you can listen to SRA survivors that are survivors of Epstein Island. What's happening there? Okay, what's happening there is basically an orchestrated event where people participate in both observing and participation in rape and torture, and so on and so forth. And some of this is, a lot of this is recorded, okay? It's recorded because the desire is to have this material, so whenever you want to expose a person, you have snuff film, okay? You have snuff film, then there are pedos, which we know is kind of like, it's the worst, it's the creme de la creme of criminal offenses. And this is also why we would have Supreme Court judges continuously performing snuff films, which means torturing, raping, and murdering children on film. And then that's to keep them under the guard, okay? To make sure that they are going according to the plan. And this is leading to situation for when I talked about law, I talked about the litigation, and I talked about the cases like Hussein Baby Sin. There was a client of Joris de Mink and then was put in prison for murder of children. And that was in no way a person without criminal record. He was a drug cartel lord. That being said, there are various types of drug cartel lords. A lot of the drugs that are provided by drug cartel lords is the illegal use of psychedelics or MDMA that is used amongst other things, both to rape, okay, because it can encourage people to have indiscreet sexual encounters, but also to have a love buffer that is allowing to curate the emotional experience around trauma. So there's a dual, okay, effect there. And amphetamines, which are both used for concentration and, to be competent at some things, and you have to concentrate long hours, you have to do things, kind of like that Ritalin, that Concerta, that Adderall. When they are crashed, they are used like cocaine, which is also for people to get out of stress. Okay, they take it to get out of stress. That's what I understood from people who used that drug. And some of them work in high stress position, like security for red light district, when they later have to do sex work to get the drug aside of their daytime job. Okay, so this is an actual case of a person, and it's not only that when they had problems, there's no one to talk to, but everybody spills their troubles onto them. So this is perhaps breaking a little bit of the stigma that we may have around the people who use drugs, okay, or who use drugs to the point it's not manageable. And then amphetamines are made. One of the ingredients is cyanide, and I don't need to tell you how important cyanide is for global intelligence and people that would need to, unalive themselves in 3 seconds or whatever the stigma around this. I did not use cyanide, as you can. Never tried it, so. And then if I would live to tell, I think that would create a bad reputation for what it's actually meant to do. So there's another one. So we have the way in which the structure of the secret society affect our litigation system, drug system, okay, drug cartels that are afraid to go babysinned, which means that they would do whatever they're being told, including offing someone that they know. Okay, they have to create for the visible situation. Maybe they defend a state witness, but these people are under, under guard, and they will guard who they need to guard because they basically hold the army that protects. If you remember that video of Michael Jackson that he did in basically a crime neighborhood. And because the lord of the neighborhood, okay, the drug cartel lord, was fond of Michael Jackson, he said this place is going to be the safest city on earth for the next 3 days for what you need for the shooting. And Michael Jackson actually shot I think they don't really care about us. So there's the version where he definitely has this very interesting move with the hand. But then we have to understand that Michael Jackson was forced into, because grew into what these dead cults as well. So now we think about the army. Okay, now we think about the army. It's not just the army, it's the decisions that we make, that the world makes at war, and the understanding that if on an Epstein Island, basically somebody orders a movie, that movie plays out. That movie is violent, it's brutal, but it's also surprising, and it's also unexpected. So it has to also be entertaining, and that is being used in various ways. For example, the testimonial of Anneke Lucas. That comes in mind. She was sold into these dead cults, and then they saw that she could have in her bloodline talents to sing and so on, to be sexpionage basically, and they used her for very likely similar to MK Ultra. And then her handler, okay, there was a scene where a movie was ordered where she had to kill 2 grown men. She had weapons, she was a child, of course. She had to kill 2 grown men, and she killed these people. Whether it was connected or not connected, her handler eventually was the person that her handler had to torture her, to make her forget things, to bring personalities where if she would sleep, let's say, with a politician or something like that, then she would feel affinity to this person, and then she would give information to her handler. And this is the reason they do rape in sexpionage, because for sexpionage you don't need rape, okay? It just means that there's a natural affinity, and polarities are playing a role, and relatability is happening as natural affinity, and then even by the sexual encounter or energy encounter, okay? Sometimes it can be in dreams, somebody has a placement in each other, 12th house and so on, and then things happen, but that can also be positive things where certain processes and the access to, the eroticism, the love, and so on is good for both people. But when global intelligence practice sexpionage, they practice this and create the separation within the person. This is why they rape. They try to make a person be able to have a sex without emotions. Okay, and essentially, if we're not body not designed to do that. Definitely not on daily basis. So this is result of trauma, and also young boys. Okay, there's something that I want to say, but I don't speak about testimonial because I don't know how much this person exposed or aware of what he exposed when he told his testimonial. But it's something done also to young boys, and that can create, for the disconnection emotionally, physically, medically. We need connection between, heart and genitals and so on, for the blood flow, for nervous system, and so on. And this is why when people curate that, they practice tantric practices where we immerse and make sure our heart is open. And it's not about commitment or relationships, simply about good energy flow in the body and fulfilling erotic experience where you stay sovereign. Okay, doesn't mean about the nature of the relationship or if you're married or not. It's not from that point. So these children are taught to be sexpionage. They're taught to have information, and these politicians are also survivors of these death camps. Okay, they also raped. They were also tortured. They were also electrocuted and had to perpetrate such torture as well. So this exchange that is actually truly relatable and truly real between the two, and truly unhealthy in the sense that perpetuating this trauma and actually it's raping children. Okay, it's not the internal experience necessarily of those involved, but that's the fact of what's happening, and that is also what is happening in the rings, and that is also what is happening at war. Okay, because if war is that snuff film, then everything that happened on Epstein Island is basically orchestrated to happen because the role of the Epstein ring, the role of Epstein, this is why these people are so guarded. It takes a lot to train someone to be like Epstein. You can listen to episode 9 from Anneke Lucas' podcast for a person who was to be trained to be like Epstein, and then he left midway. A lot of energy is invested to put the people in such position. And they're very sacred. They're big assets. This is why Puff Daddy is not going to, they're going to show an image of him in jail, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pay for it as much as we think. They're highly protected because it took so much investment to create them, and the soul always wants to curate itself. Okay, the soul always wants connection. The soul always wants the intimate experience to be joyous. The soul always wants to, even through the dream state, to heal, to cure, and to heal others, not to perpetuate trauma. It takes tremendous amount of energy to keep basically a person wanting to be cruel, which is something that I was not aware of, until I listened to these testimonials, whereas we are taught to say, to not believe the desire of person to heal, because we need to see evidence. But the fact is the soul always wants to grow and heal and love, and it's the insane amount of energy that is invested in keeping a person in situation of to be perpetrator. That is the thing. And then of course is fear, which yes, I'm not talking about between two people, I'm talking about those systems. Okay, so the next important thing to understand about that, if we're coming to have like 5 minutes more to talk about this topic, is that the training of the army personnel is oriented towards being the perpetuator, get as close as possible to the Peter ring dealer. Okay, and for Anneke Lucas, it was actually the handler that smuggled her out of these projects. Okay, she was basically saved by the very person that was a perpetrator. So that's something, okay, we don't think about too much. So the understanding that what we are seeing, what is orchestrated, the decisions that are made are oriented to bring a snuff film and human sacrifice, the use of dual, okay, both as human sacrifice and as something that the person of rank is obligated to perform, or obligated to give, in order to keep a higher rank in society. And it works like McDonald's, except that when you are fired there, you are truly fired, and it's not necessarily easy death. So now that brings me to the next topic, and the next topic is the global intelligence as Masonic architects. And we know of the history of Masons, or the Crucians that came before them, was of tribes that basically took over, where there was Khazarians in the church, and the people who were the builders, okay, who had the skills to build structures, they were recruited more or less forcefully, and were enslaved, okay, under the name and under the guise of free Masons. Okay, the talent and skill caused their slavery, and the talent and skill had to do with architecture. Architecture, the structure of once we go out of the womb, the structure into which we go to has utmost significance. Okay, so it's basically the womb. Outside the womb is our housing. Okay? It's not for nothing that housing first and open dialogue, okay, believe in the person, curates schizophrenia, which is essence of a person's soul being taken away from their feet. If you think about it, the crunchy skin you have in your feet, that, by the way, some fish help that, okay, fish that had gnats in help that, to be present again in your feet and renew that skin is assisting you to curate schizophrenia. So why would that happen? Is basically your feet is kind of like the root chakra, disconnecting you to the ground. So you need to be grounded enough, and having bare feet on the soil helps your nervous system and allows you to open the crown and to be feeling interconnectedness in a way that is sovereign. That's how you cure psychosis, okay? So naturally, if a person got, raped in the family, or followed by intelligence, or, MK Ultra, then it would be disconnected. It would be intentional attempt to keep them disconnected. So that is a part of how these infiltrations happen. And so the people that orchestrate the living space for people when they come out of the womb, be it the hospital, the housing, the school, the church, institutions, those are the people that design the womb that contains or not contains and the person. And the womb here is not designed to contain. And so the person wouldn't have upbringing where the womb is not designed to contain, and the infiltration happens also at conception, at birthing. If you watch the Mama versus Mafia, you know about stealing wombs from young girls to breed the hermaphrodites, okay, the people of the cult into the world. But this is not done because the young girls has the youth and the this and the that. No, it is creating trauma around the conception. That's the worst trauma that it can be, and seeding a seed where a person, even before they came into the world, they are all the seed of trauma rather than a seed of love and interconnectedness. Okay, that's backed up by the church. Nothing to do with Christ consciousness, nothing to do with Christ, nothing to do with Jesus. It's just the structure of how people experience their access to religion. Okay, then there's of course the birthing, this in many cases not natural, and then they rape the infants. So they make it sure that the person would have intense trauma, so that they would like to be perpetrators, that they would like to hurt, that they would find joy in perpetuating harm, and that it would be considered impossible to curate them. It's not impossible. It all goes to the architecture of both the cycles of the birthing and so on. Let's say baby is born, and the architecture of the building, the architecture of the school, the architecture that supports or not supports, and there's a lot of energy wisdom that goes into that, sacred geometry. And the issue is not necessarily okay, if you live in a triangle, you live in a tent, it's what is the inside this tent, because if it's the seed of trauma, to put it in a triangle will protect this, whereas it's the seed of love, to put it in a triangle would protect this. So this is the geometry of those architects, basically architects. Okay, their role was to design structure, and then they got enslaved for their talent and their skill, and made to make sure that the structure, the womb that we go into when we go out of the womb, is the womb of the motherland, of the country, of the entity, of the kingdom, and is by design perpetuating trauma rather than creating a sense of belonging, so much so that when we have sense of belonging, we're rejected because of trauma. This is ancestral, okay? The housing, the grave, the ancestral lineage, the motherland or motherlands, and so on and so forth. And so when you think about the global intelligence as those secret societies, as Masonic societies, you think about people, there's generations of slaves. They're very talented and very skillful and have a lot to contribute to life. It's just that their own internal experience, and by design, the system is putting them to perpetuate the trauma through structure, whether it's the structure of soul, the structure of essence that you put into geometry or sacred geometry, the structure of a daily life, the structure of engineering, and so on and so forth. And this is how people come to not like technology, because it's not a supportive of your livelihood structure, and only if it's kind of like to hook someone into a situation that they came outside of the cult. So to hook them in, it's like, this is going to be good for you, this is this, and something is good, and then poof, the trauma begins. So trauma bonding people. When we understand that this is the structure of a global intelligence, we understand that just like in the army, it's not doing art of war, doing everything wrong, and a lot of energy being put into people, because when two people fight, okay, they get to know each other. There's a ceasefire, they play soccer, they play football, they get to know each other, okay? They cannot fight again. When you look into the eyes of offenders, when people look into one another's eyes, very difficult for them to, intimacy is created. So, and also the seventh house, okay? The opponent, when you see, person could be hidden enemy, then you see them, you confront them, then an alchemical structure, something happens. It's a collision. This collision is very intimate and create bonds. So note that both arts of war, if it's the Mars of Scorpio, then it's transformation and alchemy. If it's the Mars of Aries, then it's just sovereignty, okay? There's me and there's you, and each of us understand our sovereignty, and the other polarity is Libra, which is a new balance, okay, dynamic balance. For Scorpio, the other polarity is Taurus, which is completely tantric, okay? It's I dare say, okay, it's completely tantric. The other seventh houses and so on, if you're approaching the Virgo and Pisces axis, it's the axis of blending into one another, and creating it's blending and to being of service and curating one another. It's basically what it is. So this is okay. That's what it's at. So even when we think about war or we think about things that scare us, the natural tendency here is not to fight. Okay, to confront a person, you that comes to meet them have so much more in common than you think in the beginning. But sometimes if you're warrior, they already know you're coming to meet yourself. How would you treat yourself? Disrespectfully? No. Okay. And that is when people come to know that, then they understand the situation, and they create the alchemy, and they change and they transform, and also not afraid of conflict, because they know I come to transform, and they know that the end result is Venusian. So, okay, but the only thing is if they're afraid of connection. Thank you. Happy New Year. If they're afraid of connection, why would they be afraid of connection? Because by design, those that create the womb outside the womb, okay, the architecture, the housing, and the schooling and the religious structure are by design enslaved, so that they can enslave the people. Moon, again, okay, another symbol of moon, is not just housing, but also we, the people. This is why when Pluto enters Aquarius, it's the sign of we, the people, and that's highly important, because people are coming out of these structures and out of this enslavement and out of this slavery. And even within the Masonic societies, we have the people like JFK. There was in no way Virgin Mary. Okay, if was he had to perpetuate rape, he betrayed Marilyn Monroe, he whatnot. Okay, so okay, very likely being kind of like Epstein wouldn't be president, and even from this position, he said, "I'm going to expose this plan to enslave humanity. I'm going to expose for this plan that's coming to enslave humanity." Okay, or the best way to win world wars is to avoid them. It's known for the Cuba missile crisis, and had a point on Procyon. Okay, so perhaps that right now head of NATO has Jupiter on Procyon, is calming, and yes, I don't want to be too optimistic here. I was a person not afraid of conflict, but at the same time not naturally eager to prolong conflict, unless it's something to do with their survival. So even from within these cults, we have had people that leaked. Okay, we had people that leaked what's within the cult, because it's basically going out of slavery. Okay, free man is not oppress another, and this is wisdom that, you know, maybe you go through some ranks without knowing, but essentially, you know, because to oppress another takes a lot of energy, lots of time, and that which you try to control controls you. Anybody who ever been close to anybody who practice kink, even unconsensually, sees that. Okay, because why is this person wanting so much control over me? Okay, because in that way they can surrender. Oh, okay, fine, but wouldn't that be like easier to do that with willing consent? What is the intricacy there? You have to build into the tantric experience, and when people have been disconnected from their own sexuality, just when they try to connect, this brings up purging, and there's a lot of intricacy into that. Okay. One thing I can say for you, if you have a deep breath, if you have blending with someone and you want to have your deep breath also including, like, for them to have a deep breath and so on, I would recommend you not to go there. If you're practicing tantra, you know what I'm talking about, without you both having discussed that. And I would recommend you that if you go there, you understand you're doing art of war of alchemizing rage. So if they're violating your boundary, you do it out of war of alchemizing rage, and it's going to be rage. Okay, they're gonna go to the extreme. You're gonna have to work with art of war to alchemize for that energy, and you have to put in place with the sovereign. Okay, if you don't, it's not about overpowering them. It's about returning, ushering, landing into sovereignty. But then they can be dependent on you. Okay, they have to learn. Will be willing to learn that as well. If it is just kind of like to curate or anything, don't prolong the breath. Don't interfere with their breath. If it's not about boundary setting, okay, don't go into out of war. Because this is the meaning of the act. Okay, if you interfere in their breath, you're going into out of war, and you're not making love. So they're going to be intensely furious at you, and you're going to have to alchemize this energy. And sometimes it can come as a coping mechanism for they are violating your boundaries. Okay, so that is important to understand. But it's not a practice of intimacy. Okay, it's your breathing, it's their breathing. If you haven't discussed doing anything like breathing together, one person breathes for both of the controls the breath of both, then yes, don't do that. Okay, it brings in everything in the psyche, breathing psyche, to be purged, and the person needs to be in sovereignty around it, or they would need to lean on you so completely that you would contain everything, and you really don't know what is there to contain, because stuff are going to be brought up in you because you're breathing as well. So this is something that I can tell you that's very important. Okay, when you practice these things. So yes, you cannot talk about out of war without talk about tantra, because it's the Venus and Mars, and you cannot be penetrated without penetrating, and you cannot penetrate without being penetrated. And I don't mean that on a physical, tabbing to start beating. I mean it on a very spiritual. This is also important to discuss in the last 8 minutes we have, to discuss the topic of spirit and matter, because a lot of these intricacies happen on the level of spirit. If we're indoctrinated that to just talk about it is to is you're imagining, then we miss out on the hidden facets, and communication must be open about those hidden facets as well, must contain that, and this greater authenticity that's required of us on all levels of being, because this is a part of just a natural communication that's needed for good relations. And you understand that cosmology that denounces spirit or denounces matter, because there are also, if you think about communism in China of Mao, is denying, it's the mind over matter, so much so that people deny the people food. Or some Indian traditions. Okay, if we don't have this good balance of matter and spirit, then this is also by design harming, okay, society. So yes, love is important and food is important, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I managed to cover more than I expected in this time. I'm gonna upload it and see how you guys react to that.